This
series.
conference will now be recorded.
Thanks, John.
Hello.
About that.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi, this is Tucker Braddock from Norwich,
Hi, Tucker.
Connecticut. Hi there.
Yes.
I will not be able to participate in today's call, and I'm very sorry, but I would like to be involved in the next one, the third one.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Tucker. That'd be great.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. So this is the second in the four-part series of, we have two more next week on Monday and on Thursday. So today what we're looking at, the origin of these webinars started with our Connecticut RC&D's environmental review team. So John, if you want to get the slideshow going. Then I can sort of talk to it. Although I didn't include the other slides, since a lot of you, I didn't want to duplicate what I had said last week, but John's got a great screenshot here. I think I jumped off those cliffs when I was 17. So the Connecticut Aquatic Invasives project is part of our an application that came from 12 towns of the lower Connecticut River Valley to Connecticut RC&D's environmental review team. And this project, the environmental review team, or ERT, is a program that's funded by the Connecticut Passport to Parks program and underwritten by Connecticut RC&D. What it does is it gets together volunteers, professional volunteers, scientists, ecologists, land use planners, transportation specialists, whatever a town or a land trust may need to look at a particular situation or a property and come up with solutions or recommendations, or basically an inventory of what the existing situation is. So the 12 towns of the lower Connecticut River Valley that are butted the river applied in concert through RiverCog. Margot Burns helped them submit the application. And we ended up doing, over the past year, we've been working with helping them find funding and getting toward a mechanism for public outreach, which is what this mechanism is. And we will end up with a report for the 12 towns on next steps that are based on the information that is provided by both the environmental review team members who are participating in this particular webinar, and other input from other stakeholders who have been around the table, and also a very strong contribution from the Connecticut the Ag Experiment Station, Greg Bugbee and Summer Stebbins, which we'll be presenting on next Thursday on the findings of the survey and mapping. Today's team, we have both Suzanne Thompson, who's the chairman of the Connecticut Gateway Commission, and she will talk about their efforts for the lower Connecticut River Valley, and also Fred Carstensen from UConn's Center for Economic Research, and who has done a number of amenity asset studies and studies understanding the economic value. So it should be a pretty interesting webinar today to understand what it is that hydrilla is actually impacting. So it's not just a simple matter of that we have aquatic invasives that threaten to create large mats of unmanageable vegetation, and it will be costly to clean up, which we heard about last week. It also has factors that could impact the economic viability of the lower Connecticut River and also the upper Connecticut River, and then reach into our lakes and other rivers within Connecticut if not controlled. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Suzanne Thompson of the Connecticut Gateway Commission, and I believe we'd go to the next slide.
Thank you very much. Everybody's found themselves muted. We have a little feedback going on. Hopefully that's not me. Is it better? Aha. Okay, great. I'm delighted to be able to participate in this webinar with you and to see the concerted effort and emphasis on tracking, understanding, and eradicating aquatic invasive species in the Connecticut River, and equally as important, the raising of public awareness to the problem and engaging people, stopping the spread of the different species that you're tackling. We all have a role to play, whether you're a scientist tracking what is out there, or whether you have a boat and you put it in the water, or maybe like Humphrey Tyler or myself, you're somebody who's volunteering to help clean up and try to eradicate or at least keep in check some of these invasive species. You see the map here of the Connecticut River Gateway Zone. In 1973, the state legislature established the zone, the Connecticut River Conservation Zone, the Connecticut River Gateway Commission, and it was endorsed by the 8-member towns. You see them listed there on going up on the left hand, the west side of the river, up to Haddam and across and back down Middlesex County to New London County. You know, it's a fascinating history, and you can read more about it on our website, the Connecticut River Gateway Commission, and other websites. We're ctrivergateway.org. There was a concerted effort to put a federal park in the lower Connecticut River, this same general territory, I guess, in the 60s, the idea that it could be the Grand Canyon of the East. Federal lands conveniently located halfway between Boston and New York City and a lot of other urban centers that people should come and enjoy this area. Well, given the history of this region and many families who still remember an ancestor getting land deeded by the king, as well as generations after that, rich history in the area, that didn't go over so well. And so that did not happen, but instead this locally engaged approach came about. Each town established, determined its portion of that gateway zone. It's up to the first ridge line looking up from the water. And then each of the 8 towns appoints 2 commissioners, a commissioner and an alternate. We also have a representative from Connecticut Deep and the Lower Connecticut River Council of Government. So that forms our Gateway Commission. We hold monthly meetings, and we are staffed by a senior planner. Torrance Downs is our current person that has been with the commission a number of years. After Linda Krause was instrumental in getting it established and organized. John, to the next. We'll go to the next slide. This is the legalese verbiage, the language that established the commission and the zone. And you see some key words in here: unique, scenic, ecological, and scientific and historic value, contributing to public enjoyment, inspiration, and scientific study. It is in the public interest to prevent deterioration of natural and traditional riverway scene for the enjoyment of present and future generations. So not only is that lofty, but it's also pretty specific. You look at the next paragraph, and it does specifically talk about common standards for practices and uses, and that also relates to heights of building, size, and bulk. The point is to try to limit the density or encroaching density along the river, and to keep as many trees as possible, frankly, because that is part of the traditional river view as we look at it. Next slide, John. I'm sure you'd rather look at pretty pictures instead. So here we are looking north. How far north can you see up there? I don't know if we can see the Salmon River leading off up there, or up into Haddam, East Haddam, certainly beyond Essex. Or let's take a look to the south. Next slide, please. This is more like today's weather, and you're looking down at Old Lyme and Old Saybrook in the summertime in the river. So predominantly we are talking about residential development, maintaining common standards across the towns. Our commission works with the zoning boards of the towns, and our staffer works directly with the zoning staff in the towns. And we also work with them, the towns, to update standards over time. Of course, these need to be refreshed and updated every 5, 6, 7 years or so. So that is kind of an ongoing collaborative process. A few landmarks, let's see the next slide, that you would know and readily recognize. Gillette's Castle, which had a significant meaning in the lower Connecticut River Gateway Zone. And here's a park bench up in Chester as well. So we're trying to work with land trusts and conservation organizations on preserving and protecting open space as well. Next slide, please. We have a two-prong approach, you could say. We have the regulatory that I just mentioned, how the towns have the gateway zoning standards. The commission oversees the conservation zone, and together we work to maintain common standards across the towns. The other portion is that we were originally set up in the 70s to help acquire open space and protect land looking up from the river. Money was given by the state legislature, but it often happens it is not replenished or it is swept away in these current times. We were fortunate to receive $1 million settlement, the proceeds from power lines going across the Connecticut River in 1983, and that then has funded a conservation fund. We invest the funds very conservatively, prudently, and over the years, we have helped land trusts and others protect over 1,100 acres at an estimated value of over 10 million, but we've only invested or contributed 1 to 1.5 million in that process. So the state has gotten a good bang for the buck. Usually what we do is we don't intend to hold land forever. We may be the partner that comes in and we're able to provide the loan or the financing to acquire the land while land trust is fundraising, or it's really not easy or glamorous to raise money for a survey when you need it quickly. So land trust could come to us if the land is in the gateway zone area. We agree that's a high priority. That might be one that we say, here, we'll pay those fees for you. Other lands we've helped acquire ended up being bought by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but of course that took a few years to close that whole deal. If we had not been there, the land probably would have gotten away. That first $1 million that we received, immediately 300,000 of it was used in the 80s to acquire a strategic piece of property next to Gillette Castle. So that was very fitting as well. So let's move to the next slide. These are some examples, and you can read more about them on our website, and you can see the different pieces of property that we have helped in each of the towns in the Gateway Zone to acquire over the years. I also have to point out we have a spiffy new logo, a collaborative team effort by some of our commissioners who decided the one that we had before needed to be brought up with the times. So if you see, I've never seen that circular thing before. That is new this year. So we're just rolling that out. Same organization, a little bit different logo. But I would like you to go to our website and take a look at some of the more of the information about the properties that we have helped the towns acquire and save. Let's go to the next slide. The thing that we've realized over the years, though, and commissioners serve for 2-year terms, and many of them have had multiple terms. So we do have a transition of people in the organization, that there are other things that perhaps we could be doing to be involved in. We take it seriously when we say that we have a responsibility for the ecology of the lower Connecticut River. Generally, we're a land-based organization trying to maintain the look and feel of the lower Connecticut River. But some of you had come to us and said, we need help and funding because this is an emerging problem, aquatic species. Yes, they're under the water, but they are going to threaten not only the ecology, but the public use and enjoyment of the river. So we felt in the last couple of years that we chose to provide some funding, seed money on a couple of different invasive species control and study efforts. Next slide, please. We recognize we have a part to play. We're trying to figure out how we can do that, and meeting our mission and making sure that our mission stays current. Rich Snarsky, hello, you're here on ICU as well. He was one of the examples where he came to us in the Lord's Cove area and said, I want to control the Phragmites here. So we were some seed money on that project a few years back with the Lyme Land Conservation Trust. And then more recently, an effort to control woody herbaceous vines, bittersweet, and all the multiflora rose, all those wonderful things with some very limited controlled spraying as well on trust for the Nature Conservancy's land. So those are 2 examples. We continue to talk about, those are 2 with Rich. Let's go to the next one. The big one that you will be hearing about, and this was interesting because it involves some studying and mapping on all parts of the Connecticut River for hydrilla by by the ERT as well as the Connecticut Ag Experiment Station. And this was unique for us in funding that because we were working with others to the north of us. And we think that that is important. We realize everything flows down the river. So I hope that's just a quick overview that's useful for you to see. We exist as an organization. We are not a grant funding organization per se. Our primary mission is to help acquire the open space and protect the scenic river view in the lower Connecticut River, but we are looking in ways that we can be a part of efforts with emerging trends like invasive species and certainly including aquatics. One last slide. I think we've got our website and we encourage you to go follow us on Facebook as well. And I'll be happy to talk with anybody offline afterwards.
Thank you, Suzanne. That was great. The gateway was so instrumental, and we were very pleased that they had the leadership capability to be able to kick off the survey that happened in 2019 to get some idea of how extensive the preliminary mapping had shown for the hydrilla problem in the lower Connecticut River. So between their funding and the 8 Mile Wild and Scenic, which also provided some funding for their area to do some mapping and surveying, it really helped kick off the project, and we're hoping that that other areas of funding will emerge as this project moves forward, and we're going to try to identify those in the report as we move forward. So John, next slide. So this is the Connecticut Center for Economic Analysis, Fred Carsonson. I know Fred from when I was working at RiverCog over 15 years, and we worked on, we knew each other from various economic studies and analysis that he had done for the state, but he also came down with his team and did an amenity asset study for the lower Connecticut River Valley. So as we were pulling this project together, I knew that going to this group would be beneficial for better understanding the full economics of the impact on the amenity assets that hydrilla might and the other aquatic invasive might incur on the lower Connecticut River Valley. So Fred, without further introduction, take it away.
Thank you. Let's just go to that next slide on the oh, well, we that's not where I wanted to go, but that's okay. I'll start with that because that's what's up. The point about amenities is, and we can talk about disamenities, in invasive aquatics or invasive land, and I live in Old Saybrook, right next on my property backs on the 1,000-acre preserve, which has some very serious issues with invasives. And in fact, there's an endowment that the Trust for the Public Lands helped create to manage the preserve when the trust and the state of Connecticut and Old Saybrook collaborated to buy it from the bankruptcy referee for the Lehman brothers, who had held the mortgage for a developer that was going to try to develop things, which fortunately didn't happen. So you want, amenities are positive things, disamenities obviously are negative things. And what we do is we translate it into monetary values. And that's turns out often to be very important in the policy process, because you need often to get people, legislators, policymakers, to understand that things that don't have a formal price tag on them, like preserving a 1,000-acre area like the preserve that has vernal ponds and is the headquarters for 3 of the local rivers, actually is something that we can compute. And this is, Jean was referring to the study that we did for RiverCog. that we know from real estate values, for instance, that because we also did studies for deep for Dan Esty on the importance of the state parks and forests and the trout hatcheries. And we could demonstrate that open spaces and backing on these areas actually raises residential property values. We know that tourism, for instance, when we did the state parks and forests and the hatcheries, the fact that Connecticut had one of the few states that had brown trout hatcheries. Brown trout are what trout fishermen particularly like, because they're smart and hard to catch, unlike rainbow trout, which turn out to be stupid and easy to catch. That's what I've been told. So I don't want to disparage. I don't know if you have any lovers of rainbow trout here. I want to be careful about these things these days, right? So, but it turned out that was we could, because we got fishing license data, we could identify literally hundreds of trout fishermen who came to Connecticut, largely because of the brown trout. And we knew we could get data from various ways of how long they stayed, how much they spent, so we could translate that into, economic values. The lower Connecticut River Valley has a lot of amenities, the Kate, the Essex steam train, and so on. And so we, turned this into it. We've got these marinas and so on. You see aquatic benefits, and these are non-pecuniary income but we can translate that. So it's very helpful in talking to people who may not have any intrinsic interest in preserving open space or so on, to demonstrate to them that it actually translates into identifiable economic returns. And we did the other one I listed later. We did a thing on the Naugatuck River Greenway, and there are very, very significant health benefits from giving people access to things like trails and greenways where they can walk. And we actually can identify, and did identify for that study, how much savings you make in foregone health expenses. So very important. Next slide. This is just talking about these are actually disamenities, why it's so important to attack this, and we just made some of the obvious things that you already know about. But we can, this is the kind of actually start with, and we then identify the implications of this in terms, say, of property values. I mean, if you let the Connecticut River degrade, you make living anywhere along it, near it, being able to utilize it less valuable, less attractive. You will degrade property values. You will degrade. You will lose tourism activity, and all of the associated things that go with it. I mean, this even goes, even for somebody who never uses these things, for an employer, for instance, to attract somebody to come, Lee and Company here in Westbrook and Old Saybrook and Essex, in order for them to attract people to come to work for them, they want to have an attractive community that has amenities and is well maintained. And so this is the kind of thing that we look at. Next slide, please. So this is what I say. This is sort of where I wanted to start. I just put this in a larger context in terms of the kind, and you all know this intuitively. Having access to parks, having access to trails, all of these things are important, and obviously invasive aquatics degrade the value, the enjoyment that you get from the river or the streams, wherever they're a problem, and we're acutely aware of that. the Trust for Public Lands. My wife is on the advisory board for the preserve and so on. They've actually got a study underway identifying and mapping the invasives, and they've had a couple of major work projects getting them out. And I just go through what I talked earlier about the value of amenities. We understand this intuitively, and there are lots of different ways that disamenities, manifest themselves. So we want, as I say, we can value amenities, or we can show what the costs are that are imposed on society in lots of ways with the disamenities. Last slide, please. There we go. This is just the 3 studies that we've already done. There are actually 4 listed here because we didn't have to edit this quite right. 3 of these are things that we completed. The River Cog study, we did that in Naugatuck Greatway. These are on on the CCA website at UConn. The Deep one, which was really stunning because that one showed that for every dollar that the state was spending, it was generating about $36 in economic impact in terms of tourism and expenditure structures and other forms of that has the trout hatcheries. We're actually involved right now. It's interesting. It's the Parks Department and the Department of Public Health in Springfield, Missouri, that hired us along with a consulting firm, actually from Bozeman, Montana, to evaluate what's created, the value that's created. And it's interesting that you mentioned the importance of trees earlier as part of it. As part of the Springfield study, we've actually included a calculation of the carbon capture in the tree canopy in their parks. We have sufficient detail that we're actually able to say how much they're contributing to capturing carbon dioxide. And they have plans for expansion, and we were able to say, well, with that expansion and with the tree cover that expansion would support and maintain, you're going to gain this amount of additional benefit. So that's the kind of thing that we do, and we've been, very interested in, very supportive of exactly these kind of initiatives, and have tried to make them more attractive to policymakers and to funders, to state legislators. I've done a lot of legislative testimony, trying to persuade the legislatures and executive agencies of the importance, like the one that we did for Dan Essie. Actually had us do that precisely because of the budgetary pressures that Connecticut was facing, and he wanted to be able to tell show the legislators and OPM that what state parks and forests were doing, what the environmental side of DEEP does was in fact very important, and that the investment had a very high rate of return, and that was something that ought not to be on the chopping block. Okay, 4:30. I did it. All right. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? I'm trying to keep everybody on time. I'm sorry, this is why I am eternally grateful to John Guskowski for his speedy and consistent internet, because I got booted off somehow, even though we have 2 internet services in the house. So anyway, next week, if anybody has any, yes, Fred.
I do have. I just wanted to know, in all of these activities, I happen to know a lot about the kind of environmental programs that are at all of our universities, every single one of them. University of Bridgeport, in fact, the new president is somebody who has been very much involved. And I'm wondering how much has the Gateway, recruited university folks. Forestry School at Yale, UConn has in Cairn, agricultural natural resources. They have people and students that are interested in and would be very much engaged. And I just wondered how much had been done to engage our institutions of higher education.
That's our next step. We are going through this webinar, and then we have the Connecticut Ag Experiment Station has been taking a lead on this for the aquatic invasives for the hydrilla. But we plan to reach out to other stakeholders to figure out where are the leadership possibilities in moving this forward, so that it's either a team effort or a single led effort. But that'll be part of our environmental review team report.
Okay, good. That's very helpful.
Yeah. Good question, though. So next week we will have Monday and Thursday again. Next week we'll have Humphrey Tyler, Judy Preston talking about Friends of Whalebone Cove efforts on the local level, and Margot Burns will talk about initiatives from the River Cog level on a regional. And we may just get John Guskowski to talk about it on the town level also. So, and we are trying to work with DEEP to see if we can get DEEP to chime in with a presentation also on their efforts, because they have a significant role and have been contributing quite a bit to this problem. So anyway, thank you again, everybody. I will, once we have the webinars downloaded, we will be uploading them to our website. And I just have to wait for our technical crew at RC&D to do that, but look forward to that next week, I imagine, after we get all 4 of them done. So thank you again.